Today we find ourselves revisiting a foundational conversation, one that shouldn't require reiteration, but tragically does. At the core of the national dialogue stands a young woman, Riley Gaines, who, with both poise and passion, has placed into public view the anguish and confusion shared by many female athletes across this country. Her words, laden with both earned authority and emotional authenticity, resonate not only as a critique of recent policy decisions but as a moral compass pointing us back to basic truths long taken for granted. In a press conference that has since ignited both applause and resistance, Gaines articulated a frustration that should never have required voicing in a civilized and democratic society, that women must once again rise to defend their biological boundaries, to secure privacy in places of undressing, and to reclaim fairness in competitive arenas specifically designed to protect them. "I'm frustrated that we have to be here," she declared. That line, simple but thunderous, pierced through a culture too often caught between virtue signaling and policy confusion. To understand the emotional, psychological, and legal weight of this moment, we must begin with clarity. Clarity in language. Clarity in definition. Clarity in rights. Title IX, a federal law enacted in 1972 to prohibit sex-based discrimination in education, was once lauded as a beacon of progress. But in recent years, its core meaning has been subjected to relentless reinterpretation, first by unelected bureaucrats, and then by state policies that deliberately blur biological distinctions. Gaines' protest is not political posturing, it's a plea for integrity. Integrity of law. Integrity of science. Integrity of identity.
Well, goodness gracious, it's an honor to be here, to stand beside, of course, Secretary McMahon, Attorney General Bondi, these amazingly brave athletes, Representative Libby. But truthfully, I'm frustrated. I'm frustrated that we have to be here, that we as women have to stand before you all on national television demanding equal opportunities, demanding privacy in areas of undressing, demanding safety in our sports. Amazing to me that we are still here fighting this fight, that the Democratic Party has really doubled down, tripled down, quadrupled down on their ridiculous stance, but that's exactly what they've done. Let me tell you what sports has done in my life. Of course, in terms of athletic achievement, I very proudly finished my career as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a 5-time SEC champion, actually the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time, a 2-time Olympic trial qualifier, SEC Scholar Athlete of the Year, SEC Community Service Leader of the Year. The list goes on, but again, just to really reiterate, it's a lifelong journey. It's how I met my husband. It's what gave me my lifelong friends. It taught me how to be a leader. It taught me how to set goals and work to achieve those goals. All things that, of course, I'm utilizing in my life now beyond sports, that leadership in Maine, Governor Mills, Democratic leadership really across the nation, that's what they're denying girls and women of. I'm sure you guys saw the clips and the visuals that surfaced following President Trump's executive order signing of this EO, barring men from participating in women's sports within any educational program that receives federal funding. And it was the most amazing thing to be there. And you have all of these young girls. I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. They've got their jerseys on, their sports uniforms, their big bows in their hair that they wear on the soccer field. That visual means more to me than I could possibly put into words. And that is what is at stake here. That is who Governor Mills is fighting, not Donald Trump. It's those little girls. And I believe that's sick. It's regressive is what it is. They do this under the guise of progress, indicating we are moving in the positive forward direction. No, what Governor Mills is doing, and again, Democratic governors across the nation, is deeply regressive and utterly misogynistic. Over the past 3 years, I've had the opportunity to speak to countless girls in Maine and again across the country, countless parents, coaches who all virtually say the same thing. Why wouldn't anyone protect my athlete? Why wouldn't anyone protect my daughter? Why wouldn't anyone protect me? I've talked to girls who have lost roster spots, of course, podium finishes. I've talked to girls who have been exploited and simultaneously exposed to naked men in intimate areas of undressing. I've talked to girls who have been severely injured in their sports due to a male player on the opposing team. For crying out loud, we have a female representative from Maine, Laurel Libby. You just heard from her. She didn't tell you what happened to her. She lost her ability to vote and to speak on the House floor for defending girls and women, for posting about what was happening in Maine. No, this type of oppression didn't happen in Afghanistan. No, this type of censorship didn't happen in England. It happened right here in America under Democratic leadership. Again, this isn't progress. I would describe this as betrayal. Let this be a notice, these actions that we have seen put forward today by the Department of Justice, by the Department of Education, to all other states who are not willing to comply with federal law, that federal law being Title IX, which is very clear in how it was originally implemented, or at least it should be. We never knew we had to define this word sex until these both elected and unelected bureaucrats started to go through the back door and reinterpret this word to mean what they want it to mean. Originally implemented in 1972, it was only 37 words. Very brief. Ultimately, of course, preventing sex-based discrimination. Let this be a notice. California, Minnesota, the likes thereof. If you do not comply with federal law, you do not get to reap the benefits of complying with federal law. Of course, one of those benefits being receiving federal funds. Women are protected and recognized under federal law, again, that law being Title IX. The U.S. government under President Trump, including the Department of Justice, including the Department of Education, will not stand by and ignore when the federally protected rights of women and girls are being violated. Again, that encounter between Governor Mills and President Trump went viral for really all of the right reasons. I think she thought she had this mic drop moment when she said, "I'll see you in court." Guess what? You will, because President Trump is a man of his promises. That was his campaign slogan. That's what we've seen delivered. Promises made, promises kept. This is another one. People, the American people, girls, women, boys, men, old, young, white, black, gay, straight, none of those identity factors matter. We want transparency and we want accountability. Again, we voted overwhelmingly in favor of that on November 5th. And accountability is back in the White House. So I stand before you all today, and I thank you, again, Secretary McMahon, Attorney General Bondi. I thank you on behalf of course, myself, but I think more importantly, my younger sister, of all the women and girls who have dreams, like I did when I was young, to achieve, to succeed in my sport and beyond. So thank you.
Her testimony outlines not only the personal victories that sports granted her, 12 NCAA All-American honors, SEC championships, Olympic trial qualifications, but also the profound life-shaping values sports instilled: discipline, leadership, resilience, goal-setting, community. These are not trivial matters. They are not mere anecdotes. They are testaments to what structured athletic opportunity can yield for girls and young women when protected from ideological intrusion. And yet, this opportunity, she argues, is being revoked, not by external enemies, but by domestic governance. Gaines did not hesitate to call out Governor Janet Mills and others who have allowed biological males to enter women's sports categories. She calls this regression, masquerading as progress, a betrayal of American girls. This isn't Afghanistan, she reminds us. This censorship happened here, in America. Let us now ask, what does this moment demand from us? It demands a serious and constructive dialogue. One that doesn't hide behind euphemisms, slogans, or statistical misdirection. This is not a moment for shallow virtue or social media applause. This is a moment that calls for clear and accurate communication, an honest reckoning with the biological and psychological realities of sex, identity, and fairness. It is only through that clarity that we preserve the dignity of dialogue. The Department of Justice's lawsuit against Maine, catalyzed by President Trump's executive order keeping men out of women's sports, represents not just a legal action, but a principled stand against the erosion of legal boundaries rooted in biological fact. The suit contends that Maine's policies allowing transgender athletes to compete in women's sports violate Title IX and therefore deny rightful opportunities to female competitors. The DOJ has even proposed financial penalties and retroactive funding consequences for non-compliance. Specific examples were cited: a transgender athlete who placed 43rd in the boys' division but first among girls in cross-country. These cases are not isolated. They are symptomatic of a broader ideological disruption, one that, left unaddressed, undermines the very essence of competition and female identity in sport. What gains champions is not exclusion but fairness. Not hostility, but protection. Not silence, but truth-telling. And in this process, her message intersects with a broader philosophical tradition that values dialogue as the precondition for social harmony. This isn't about erasure or oppression. It's about asking uncomfortable but necessary questions. Where are the limits of empathy? When does empathy for one group begin to damage another? What do we mean when we say inclusion? And who gets left behind in the name of progress? These are questions that demand intellectual humility. They require intense listening, especially to those directly impacted, like the girls who lost podium finishes, the students forced to undress beside males, the parents who ask, "Why won't anyone protect my daughter?" These are not hypothetical concerns, they are lived experiences, testimonies of betrayal, warnings from those on the ground. To address them properly, we must systematize our knowledge. We must trace the evolution of Title IX, understand the intent of its drafters, and interrogate the implications of redefining foundational terms like sex. Gaines rightly observes, "No one thought we'd need to define sex until bureaucrats redefined it." Words, as always, shape reality. And when reality is distorted, policies fail the very people they were meant to protect. This conflict between biological obligation and cultural ideology is not just a legal matter, it is psychological. It reveals a collective confusion about identity, a desire to signal virtue even when it sacrifices coherence. The human psyche longs for belonging, but it also seeks structure. And when our policies betray that structure, when fairness gives way to ideological appeasement, the very soul of our institutions is compromised. This is a moral and civic challenge. It is also a learning opportunity. Not just for lawmakers and educators, but for us. For you. For anyone who's ever questioned whether their silence makes them complicit. For anyone who has doubted their own instincts out of fear of public backlash. Gaines invites you into that self-reflection. Am I being too passive? Am I following my principles, or being swayed by the moment? These are the hallmarks of mature engagement, not ideological rigidity. Let us not mistake confrontation for aggression. Sometimes, to protect what is sacred, confrontation becomes necessary. That does not make it less civil. It makes it courageous. The lawsuit filed by the Trump administration marks a line in the sand, not against people, but against institutional confusion. It is not against compassion, but for clarity. Not against diversity, but for definition. We are not here to eliminate anyone's dignity, we are here to protect everyone's rights. And yes, that includes the rights of women and girls. To those who oppose this effort and claim it targets transgender individuals, we say this: policies built on vagueness do not elevate, they obscure. And obscurity is the enemy of justice. In a moment defined by noise, may we find clarity. In an era of emotional manipulation, may we anchor ourselves in truth. And in a society desperate for ideological validation, may we instead cultivate moral courage, one that listens, one that questions, one that defends the most vulnerable without apology. This is not just Gaines' fight. It's our conversation. And if we are brave enough to listen, really listen, we may yet find our way back to the kind of dialogue that builds, rather than breaks. Let us pursue truth, not popularity. Justice, not ideological comfort. And in doing so, may we become once again worthy of the freedoms we inherited. Thank you.